In today's video, I'm going to show you how to create a modern weather app in Flutter. We will start by getting the user's device location and displaying the current weather data. You'll also learn how to fetch and display data like temperature, weather descriptions, and icons for the selected location. Our app will also provide additional information such as 3-hour weather updates for up to 5 days and a full weekly forecast. By the end of this video, you will have a fully functional weather app with a minimalist and beautiful UI. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. So to get started with this tutorial, you need to have some start code. For that, head over to the GitHub repository. The link is in the description. Make sure that you have chosen the start code branch and also clone the GitHub repository by copying this URL. So I'm going to open up a file explorer. And here inside the address bar, I'm going to type cmd. This is going to open up a command prompt. And here I'm going to type get clone. And this command will only work if you have get installed in your path. If you don't have, just simply download the zip file and open it inside the VS Code. So I'm going to clone the GitHub repository. So for some reason the cloning has failed for me, but I already have the project downloaded. So I'm going to head over into the project, and here again inside the address bar, type cmd, and this is going to open up the project for us inside the command prompt. So I'm going to type code dot, and this is going to open up a VS Code window if you're using a VS Code. So if you're using an Android Studio, just make sure to drag and drop your project inside the Android Studio. So now we have our project ready. And these are the files that I have prepared for you. You have some constants like app callers, API keys, and also the text style. And for sure you need to define your own API keys. We also have some extensions here like datetime, double, int, and string. Let me show you some of them. So we have some extension here that is converting our datetime to string. Or we have some extension here that's converting the wind speed from integer to a string. We also have put all the models here because our models are going to be so heavy, we're not going to be able to write them one by one. And we have some UDLs like function that's turning our weather codes into pictures. So I have also included some assets, and these are going to be our weather icons here. Now we also need to go inside of our public.yaml and define our assets here. So make sure to put one space, type dash, assets. In the next line we need to say assets and icons, and you need to save it here. So here it seems that I have made an obvious mistake. And my mistake is that here we don't need to define any dashes, but we need to define our dashes here. Assets, icons. Let's see if this one fixes it. So yeah, our assets are now defined correctly, but we also need to add these dependencies because you see, we have a lot of errors. So I'm going to show you a simple trick to add dependencies easily. Inside your keyboard, type Ctrl, Shift, and P if you're on Windows, and Command Shift P if you're on Mac. And here we have an option called Add Dependency. Here you just need to type the name of your dependency like Dio, Flutter Riverpod, and you can type as many dependencies as you want, separated by commas. I'm going to also say Giphy and geolocator. And hit enter. So these are the dependencies that we need for this project. And this is going to automatically add all of them for you. And now that our dependencies are being added, we don't see those errors anymore. So this was all about this part. In the next video, I'll show you how to work with our APIs. So now that we have our project set up, it is time for us to work with our APIs. And for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to be using two different APIs. So the first API that we're going to be using is the openweathermap.org. This is a very famous website for providing free weather APIs. So to be able to use this API, you need to create an account. And for that, I'm going to click sign in. And since I already had an account, this signed me in automatically. But in your case, you just need to create an account. And once you have created your account, just make sure to sign in. So we're going to be using this API to provide us the current weather and also the hourly weather. So for that, we need to go inside our API. So this is the list of all the available APIs with the open weather map, and some of them are going to be free and some of them are going to be paid. And for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to be using only the free ones, so you don't have to pay for anything. So let's check one of our APIs for a sample. And as you can see, Open Weather Map is providing a very comprehensive document about the API, like what fields you have inside the API, what is the kind of data that it provides, and what each of the parameters even means. So this is a comprehensive guide. You can just read it on yourself, and you also have your own fields that you can provide inside your API, like the latitude and the longitude, and also the API ID. So I'm going to leave a link in the description and you can read all this data on your own. But for now, I'm only interested in this section to have a sample of the data. But to be able to get a sample of the data, you first of all need to get an API key. For that, click on this part and click on My API Keys. Here is a list of all the API keys that is available. I already have 2 API keys, but for you this might be 1. But you can generate as many API keys as you want. So once that you have generated your API key, just make sure to copy it. Then I'm going to copy this URL and then also paste my API key and put it inside the browser. So since I already have done that, I have gone on this data. And as you can see, this is the kind of data that we get. And I have already created my models for this data. So let's compare them. So inside the models folder, we have the weather model. And let's make it also a bit bigger. And as you can see, this is going to correspond to our weather API. So for example, here we have coordination that has a longitude and also a latitude. Here we have, as our first property, we have coordination that is in itself a class. And if you click on it, we see that it has a latitude and also a longitude. And we have a constructor and also a from JSON method. Next, we have our weather that is a list, and here we have a list of weather data. Each weather data has ID, main, description, and also icon. So the same is going to go here. So long story short that I have already created all the models for you. Because if I wanted to create these models one by one, it would take a lot of time and we might have made a lot of mistakes here. So I have already created the models, and if you have any question regarding the models, you can simply ask under the comment section. So the next API that we're going to be using is going to be the Open Meteo. This is a free weather API that you do not need to create an account or have an API key. You simply need to open the documentation and choose your API. So for the sake of this project, I'm only interested in the weekly forecast API. This API is going to provide me the weather for a week. Yeah, so this is going to be the URL. So if you now come and paste this URL inside your browser, this is the kind of data that you get. And not to mention that I have already created the model for this one too. So let's check the model here. So the model that we have created is going to be weekly weather. And this is going to be here. So here we have a latitude, longitude, generation time millisecond, UTC offset seconds. And again, we have created all the models for you, so you don't have to. So these are going to be our APIs, and also these are going to be our models. What is remaining here is to use our API to get our data. So in the next video, we will define our methods for getting the data from the API. So in the previous tutorial, we got familiar with our APIs. And in this video, we're going to create the actual methods to get the data using the API. For that, we need to define our services. And I'm going to create a folder called services. Inside that folder, I'm going to first of all define geolocator. So we use the geolocator package to get the user's device location to show the weather accordingly. So let's start by defining our get location. This is going to return a position that is a special data type defined by geolocation package. and this is going to contain the latitude and also the longitude. We make this method async because we need to wait until the user approves the permission. So first of all, we need to define our location permission, and we check if the permission is provided or not. So if the permission is not provided, we need to ask for it. Otherwise, if the permission is denied, we need to return an error. I'm also going to check if the permission is denied forever. This way we cannot ask for permission anymore. So I'm going to return an error. And lastly, if we have no errors, I'm going to return geolocator.getCurrentPosition. This method is going to get the current location of the device and return it for us. But in order for this package to work, we also need to add some permissions. And here we have the list of all the permissions inside the Android tab here. So make sure to copy these two lines, and inside the project, head over to Android, App, Source, Main, and Android manifest.xml. Here inside the manifest tag, directly after that we need to add our permissions and make sure to align them correctly, otherwise they would cause you an error. And save. And for the iOS, we also need to add this line here. So for that, we need to go to iOS, runner, and also info.plist. And I'm going to add the permission at the top. Let's also align them correctly. Beautiful. So now that we have defined our geolocator, let's also define our API service. So inside the services folder, I'm going to come and define my API helper. So inside the API helper, we define all the methods we use to get our data from the API. So first of all, I'm going to define my API helper class as immutable. Inside this class, we have two URL. First is the Open Video Map URL, and the second one is going to be the Open Meteo URL. We also define two fields called latitude and also longitude, and an instance of Dio package. So the first method that we define is called fetch location. Inside this method, I'm going to call getLocation method that I defined earlier inside the geolocator package. And I'm going to get my location. Using that location, I'm going to fill the latitude and also the longitude. Then I'm going to create the methods for building the URL. So instead of writing the URL inside each and every method, I'm going to build them in a separate method. So this is going to first of all build the current data URL. And this is going to be base URL / weather. We provide the latitude. We provide the longitude, units, and also the app ID that is inside my constants. So here I have two API keys, but you have to provide your own API keys. So I also defined three other methods for building the forecast URL, for building weather by city URL, and also the weekly forecast URL. So the next method that we define is going to be fetch data. This method is going to take one of these URLs and feed the data for that URL. So this method is going to return a feature of type map string dynamic, and it's going to be async. So inside this method, I'm going to first of all use try and catch. And in case we get an error, I'm going to say error fetching data from this URL. So inside the try, I'm going to call await.u.get, and I'm going to pass the URL. And we also check if the status code is 200. So if the status code is 200, it means that we have received our data successfully. Then we return it. Otherwise, I'm going to return an error. Then I'm going to start defining my main methods. The first method is going to get the current weather. So here I'm going to first of all call the fetch location method. And this is going to fetch the location and fill our latitude and also the longitude. Then I'm going to call construct weather URL, and I'm going to put it inside a URL variable. I'm going to pass that URL inside the fetch data method, and I'm going to get my data and pass it inside the response. And lastly, I'm going to turn my response into a weather model and return it. So I'm also going to do it for the get hourly forecast. First of all, I'm going to get my location. Then I'm going to get my URL using the construct forecast URL. Then I'm going to get my response using fetch data. And as you recall, this method is going to take the URL, make a DIO request, and also return our response. And lastly, I'm going to turn my response into hourly weather using the from.json method and return it. So let's also do the same for the get weekly forecast. First of all, we get the location and then we return our data. And let's do it one last time. This time for get weather by city name. And this time we also need a city name parameter. The rest is pretty much the same. So this is pretty much all the methods that we needed to define inside our API helper. In the next video, we need to define our providers. So let's define our providers now. For that, I'm going to go to the lib folder and create a new file. This is called providers. And inside that, the first provider that I'm going to be creating is current weather provider. So let's define our provider, and this is going to be of type future provider. So let's call it current weather provider, and this is going to be of type future provider dot auto dispose. And inside that, we're going to have a ref property. And you also need to make sure that we import Flutter Riverpod. But we cannot do that for some reason. So let's say it again. Future provider. We need to import it manually. Beautiful. So inside this provider, the only thing we do is that we return API helper dot get current weather. So you might be asking that why do we even need the provider in the first place? So one reason that we need our provider is not to need to call our API methods directly inside the UI. So this is going to help us to clean the code. But another reason is that these providers allow us with different states, and they help us to manage the loading and also the error state. So let's define our other providers too. I'm going to go and next define hourly weather provider. Let's create it using the same method. And this is again of type future provider. And let's clean this part. And also make sure to import Flutter Riverpod. And I'm going to call it auto dispose. So again, here we need to say API helper dot get hourly forecast. So let's repeat the code for other providers too. The next provider is going to be weekly weather provider. And here I'm going to say weekly weather provider. And this is going to call get weekly forecast. So I'm going to copy and paste the same thing for the last one. And the last one is going to be get weather by city provider. But the last provider is going to be different than other providers. And the big difference here is that this provider requires us a parameter. So let me first of all change the name. I'm going to call it get weather by city name provider, or maybe keyword convention and say weather by city name provider. So if you want a provider to have a parameter or an argument, you need to make it a family one. And then here you need to provide data types. So you need to provide two data types here. So the first data type is going to be the type of data that we're going to return. And that is going to be weather. And this is the model that we have created already. And the second data type is going to be the type of our argument. And that's going to be string. And here also, alongside the ref, we need to define our parameter. And that is going to be the city name, because this provider is going to need our city name. So here we're going to call get weather by city name, and we also pass our city name that we got from our parameter. Nice. So this was pretty much everything about defining our providers. Next, we need to create our UI. I'm going to start the UI by defining our home screen. This is the place that we define our bottom navigation bar. So let's go to the lib folder and create the screens, and then home screen. I'm going to create a stateful widget called home screen. Let's replace the placeholder with a scaffold and also put our app bar. This app bar is going to have a title that is saying home screen. Here I'm going to define my bottom navigation bar, and I'm going to use navigation bar. Each navigation bar requires some destinations. So I'm going to introduce my destinations here. So let's create our destinations. And this is going to be equal to a list of navigation destination. Each of them is holding an icon and also a label. So for the icon, I'm going to say the first one is having an icon of home. And the label is going to be empty because I don't need labels. We also want a selected icon. So for that, we put icons.home. And that means that for the simple icon, we need home outline. So let's repeat this process 3 other times. For the second one, we have an icon of search. And also here. For the third one, we have an icon of sunny. And also here. And for the last one, we got settings. And let's also make sure that this is constant. Nice. So let's also run the application to see what we are doing. And for that, I want to also bring my emulator to the site. And this is a look of our final project with the bottom navigation bar. So this is the bottom navigation bar that we are trying to create. So let's also run the app. So the build process is stopped with an error. And the error is about the Kotlin version. So let me also make this bigger. So this is saying that our Kotlin version is old. So for that, we need to head over to this website and pick up the latest Kotlin version that's going to be 2.0. And we're going to also go to Android build.gradle to replace it. So let's go to Android and also build.gradle. So it sounds like that this is the Kotlin version that we have right now. This is not exactly what we're looking for, but let's see if this one works. So I'm going to replace it with 2.0 and run my application again to see if it works. So our app has been successfully built right now, but we do not see our bottom navigation bar. For that, we need to go to the main.dart, and inside the material app instead of returning a scaffold, I'm going to return home screen. And we also need to import that. So if we hit save now, we're going to be able to see our bottom navigation bar, but it still has a couple of problems. So let's fix them one by one. So the first problem that you see is that our items are so above, because although we have said that our labels are empty, they're still taking places. So I'm going to come here and say label behavior, and then I'm going to say navigation destination label behavior that always hide. And this is going to hide our labels, so our bottom navigation bar items are centered. Next, I'm going to say that we have an index. So for that, we need to go and create our index here. But since our home screen is a stateless widget, I'm going to first of all turn it into stateful. And here I'm going to create my index. And let's come here and say selected index is equal to current page index. Then we also need to say our indicators color, and I'm going to set that to transparent because in the actual design we don't have any indicator color. So let's also perform a hot restart. And yes, our indicator color is gone. But when we click on these items, we're not seeing anything. And the problem is that we have not defined our method. So I'm going to say on destination selected, and this is going to pass as the index. So here I'm going to set the state first of all. And so the set state I'm going to say current page index is equal to the index. Nice. We also need to define our body because right now, if we click on these items, it is going to change our icon and you can see that. But we are still not displaying anything here and this is empty. So we need to specify our body, and here I'm going to pass a list of screens. And this list of screens is going to be displayed according to my index. So let's say current page index. So according to my selected index, this is going to display the screen that I have put here. So let's also define our screens. And since we don't have our screens here, I'm going to just put some center widgets. So let's say constant center. And inside the child, I'm going to say we have a text and then we have home screen. So let's also repeat it some more times, and we're going to have search screen, weather screen, and also the settings screen. And if we hit save now, you see that the home screen is displayed. If you go to search screen, you see that search screen, weather screen, and also the settings screen. So our bottom navigation bar widget is now complete. Next, we need to define our gradient container. And if you go to the complete design, you see that the background for almost all our pages are this gradient container. And this is a specific widget that we need to create. So let's define it. So for that, we need to come to the views. Inside the lib folder, maybe collapse all these tabs. So inside the lib folder, I'm going to create a new folder. This is called views. And inside the views, I'm going to create my gradient container. So I'm going to paste all the code for the gradient container because this is a very simple widget and it has a lot of colors, by the way. So what we have here is the save area. Inside which we have container with a specific height and weight. That is going to be exact screen height and weight. And then we have some decoration. Inside that we have a linear gradient that is starting from bottom left and going to the top right. And these are the colors that we contain here. You see? So let's also save this. So in the next video, we will start working on our actual weather screen. I'm going to start working on the weather screen right now. And for that, I also fixed the zoom level to make it more readable. And let's also decrease this one, so there's more space for the code. So inside the screens, let's define our weather screen. Weather screen is going to be a stateless widget, and I'm going to call it weather screen. And you also need to make sure this is a consumer widget. And add a widget right here. So before we start working here, we also need to add it inside our main.dart and inside the home screen. So inside the home screen, I'm going to add it the list of screens, and instead of this center text, let's say weather screen. And this is constant, by the way. So let's get rid of this sidebar and also close our home screen. But now we have more space for our code. And let's also get rid of main.dart. So inside the weather screen, I'm going to first of all get my data. And you can do that using our provider. So I'm going to say final weather is equal to ref.watch. And which provider are we going to watch? And that's going to be current weather provider. And then instead of returning our placeholder, let's return our provider. Let's say weather.when, and we can use when because our weather is async data, meaning that this is showing us our data, our error, and also our loading. And if you hover over it, we see that this is not a simple weather data, but an async value. So inside the error, we're going to have the error and the stack trace, like this. Here I'm going to return a center widget. Inside that I'm going to put a child, and then we have our data, our error, .toString. Inside the loading case, we don't have any parameter, and we're just going to return a circular progress indicator. Then we have the data case. So in case that we have data, this is going to give us a parameter, and the parameter is going to be data. I'm simply calling it weather, and just to make sure this is not mixed with this one, I'm going to call this one weather data, and also copy it here. So in case that we have a weather data, we need to return it, and for that I'm going to return a gradient container. And I'm sure you already know how a gradient container works. This is a simple widget that displays as a gradient background and expects us a list of children. And this list is going to contain a list of silver items because this is a silver list. And this is inside this custom scroll view. Because on some of our screens we have different scroll views. And if we have different scroll views in the same screen, it is always a good practice to use custom scroll view and a silver list. So I'm going to first of all save the file and see if the changes are taking effect, or maybe we need to perform a hard restart. Here we are given an error, and that's saying no provider scope. And that is because we have not provided our provider. So let's go to MinApp, and here I'm going to provide my provider. For that we need to wrap it inside the provider scope. And here it is. Unlike block, you do not need to provide every single block here, and you just need to say you have a provider scope, and this is going to cover for all your providers inside this application. And that's a nice thing. So let's hard restart again. And now to do hard restart the application again, this is going to ask me for the weather location, and I'm going to say I'm providing it while using the app. Beautiful. And we also see our background. But the problem is that we do not see the background here and also here. So let's fix that one. So to fix that problem, all we need to do is to first of all go and remove this app bar. So this app bar is located in home screen. I'm going to go and simply get rid of that. And yes, that is how it is. And then we need to get some color to our bottom navigation bar. So let's go and wrap it with the bottom navigation bar theme. And inside that we need to provide our data, and that's going to be bottom navigation bar theme data. So inside that we have a background color, and I'm going to be using my app colors dot secondary black. Let's see how this one works. And let's also make sure that this is hard restarted. So the change is not taking effect. Maybe this is because we used a bottom navigation bar theme. Let's say that this is a navigation bar theme. Right? And let's also save it again. And yep, this is working this time. But now we have another problem, and the problem is that our icons are missing. So let's come to the theme and also say that we have an icon theme. Or maybe inside the navigation bar, I'm going to say. So we don't have that option. And for that, we need to go to each and every icon and set a color for that. So let's come here and say that the color is going to be white. And here I'm going to take a copy and paste it for each and every icon. So let's take another copy and include a comma. And let's hit save now. Or maybe do a hard restart. And now everything looks great. So if you click on any of these buttons, you see that both active and inactive modes are white. So we finally fixed the problem. Now it is time to work with our weather screen. So first of all, we need to put a size box here. And I'm going to say the weight is going to be double.infinity. And this is because that I want the container to take the full weight of the screen. So the second element that we need to put here is going to be the name. For that, I'm going to create a text and I'm going to say weather.name. We also need a style, and that's going to be styles, text styles dot h1. And this style is going to come from this text styles file that we put in the start code. And also make sure that this one is a constant. Next, we need to put a size box here. I'm going to say the height is going to be 20. So after that, I'm going to say the datetime.now because we're going to show the date. And let me open up the real application to have a better idea of what we're doing. So this is going to be our date. Let's say datetime.now, and to make it better, I'm going to say date time. And this date time. And this date time is an extension that we just defined on our date time. And this is going to show our date using this pattern. Again, I'm going to put some size box. And this time in the height of 30. And after that, we need our asset. That is going to be this image. So for that reason, we need to create a size box. And this is going to have a height of 260. So inside the child, I'm going to say we have an image.asset. And this is going to be equal to assets, images, and then we have .png prefix. Because if you come inside our images, all of them end with png, and all of them are inside assets and icons. So here we need to say icons. But here in this between, this is the place that we get our weather name. So for that reason, we need to come here and say weather dot main. So maybe this was inside weather, right? And because the weather is a list of parameters, I'm going to say the first weather, because most of the time this is only a single item inside the list. And here we have our icon. And we also say that we need to replace all. And that's going to be from N to D, because some of our weather icons are returning an N, but we want our icons to have a D. So that is why. And in case you're checking inside our weather icons, we only have these icons with a D. So because some of our icons return an N, I'm going to replace all, and I'm going to replace all of them with a D. So yeah, this part is also done. Next, I'm going to put another size box. This time with a height of probably 40. And let's make sure that to put it in the right place. So after this size box, I'm going to put this text. And this text is going to be our description. So let's put another text. And this is going to be weather dot main. Nope, not here. Maybe inside weather. Yep, description. And you also need to put some style, and that's going to be text styles dot h3. And I'm going to also be checking h3. And I guess that's the style we require. So let's hot restart the application and also check if the style is applied correctly. So the style is a little bit messed up, and if you compare to the main style, we see that this text should be centered, and also the date is missing, and the same goes for our overcast clouds. So first of all, I'm going to use an H2 instead of an H3. So first of all, I want to center these two items, and to do that, we first of all need to wrap everything inside a column. So let's get everything here. And here I'm going to define another column with the main axis alignment, or maybe cross axis alignment dot center. And I'm going to do a hot restart. And as you see, everything is centered beautifully. So the next problem that I have is that the daytime text is not showing, and this is because I haven't selected and styled it. So let's call it text styles dot subtitle text, and if we hit save now, this is also going to show up. So we have our title text, we have our date, we have our weather icon, and we also have our weather description. And let's see how close this is to the real application. And it looks real close this time. So the next section that we're going to define is going to be this weather info. So let's create that. I'm going to first of all show a size box with a height of 40. And then I'm going to define my widget. That's going to be weather info. So let's come inside our views and define weather info. So let's now create our weather info. And I'm going to define it as an stateless widget. Here we need to take a weather as a parameter. So here I'm going to return a row. And inside the row we're going to have a bunch of children. Each child is going to be a weather info tile. And let's define weather info tile here. So as you see above, video info tile is taking two parameters. It is taking a title and also a value, both of which are string. Let's also add them to the constructor. So here all we have to do is to return a column. And inside the column we have a list of children. And I'm going to say that the cross-axis alignment is going to be center. So inside the children, we first of all have a text. And this is going to be our title. I'm going to give it a style, and that's going to be subtitle text. Then I'm going to give a size box with a height of 10. And then I'm going to give another text. This is going to hold our value, and this is also going to have a style. And this time we're going to be using a text styles.h3. So let's see what the problem here is. Yes. So we also need to import our kilometer extension. Now we need to come to weather screen and import weather info. Weather info requires us a weather. So I'm going to pass the weather. If you now hit save, we see that our weather info exists here, but we need to customize it a little bit. First of all, we come to the row, and here we say that we have a main axis alignment, and I'm gonna make it equal to space between. Now I also want to give them some padding, and I'm gonna say we have a padding of symmetric, and horizontally, this is gonna be 13. Nice, I guess that works. So this is exactly looking like the weather info here. So now that the weather info is done, we need to create our hourly weather. So I'm going to close the weather info. And here I'm going to put some space here. And if you come again to the complete app, we see this button. Here we have a text and here we have a button. So let's create them. I'm going to create everything inside the row. And I'm going to also write a comment on it. So this row has a main axis alignment as space between. And inside the children, you first of all need to put a text. Today. And then I'm going to put a text button here. The on press is going to be empty for now. And I'm also going to put a text here. And that's going to say view full forecast. I'm also trying to make this one a constant. And if you hit save, we see our view full forecast, but we cannot see our today. So let's give it some style. Now I'm going to apply in style of H2. And this is exactly what we want it to be. But there might still be a problem here. And the problem is about the little padding that we have here. So I noticed that I have put everything inside the main column, but that is not true. I have to put only these 3 widgets inside the column. I mean, this text, this icon, and also these 2 other texts. So from here on, I'm going to put everything outside the container. So let's do that. Let me take my row. And let me also take the weather info. And I'm going to put everything outside the container. Let me also make this one 40. So after our view forecast button, I'm going to define my hourly weather. But we first of all need to put a size box with a height of 15. And also make sure this is constant. So the last widget that we need to define for this screen is going to be hourly forecast weather. So let's create it here. And let's also go and define it inside the views. Hourly forecast view dot. So start by defining a stateless widget. And I'm going to call it hourly forecast view. Let's also get rid of the extra line. So first of all, we need to get our hourly forecast view. For that, we're going to be using a ref. So we need to turn our stateless widget into consumer widget. So here we need to say ref.watch, and we need to watch hourly weather provider. And if you hover over the data right now, you see that we have an async value of hourly weather. So instead of returning our placeholder, we need to return our hourly weather data, and we call the when method. So just like always, we're going to first of all handle the error and also the loading cases. So for the error, I'm going to return a text. That is going to be error.toString. And to make it look nicer, I'm going to wrap it with a center widget. For the loading case, we're just going to return a circular progress indicator. And in case that we have data, I'm going to get my data and call it hourly weather. So here, first of all, I return a list view.builder. So every list view expects as an item count and also the item builder. So the item count is going to be hourly weather dot count. We also need to say that shrink wrap is going to be true. We also need to set our scroll direction. And for that, we need to say axis dot horizontal. Next, we need to define our item builder. And this is going to give us a context and index. So inside here, I'm going to first of all get my hourly weather, add index, and of course we need to go to the list. And here I'm going to return my hourly weather tile. So let's also define our hourly weather tile. And I'm going to just copy and paste all the code for it. So what hourly weather tile basically does is like this. We first of all have a padding that is going to give some padding outside. Then we have a material widget that is similar to container. Inside this we have a color, and if this is the active container, we're going to give a color of light blue. Otherwise, you give a color of accent blue. So let's make sure to import the colors. We also have a border radius of 15 and an elevation of 8 if the container is active. Then we have some padding inside the widget, and inside that we have a row. So inside the row, first of all, have our icon. So let me open up the complete app to have more info. So first of all, inside the row, we have this icon. And on the other side, we have another column. And here is when we put our widget, that is going to be our time and also our degree together. So let's make sure to do all the imports. This is a relatively simple widget, so I'm sure you will not be confused with it. Just make sure to write the code as it is. So now we need to fill our parameters. And we also need to make sure that we have typed the widget right. So let's say hourly forecast tile in fact. So let's also fill our parameters. First of all, I'm going to put my ID, and that's going to be equal to weather.weather. As weather is a list of parameters, I'm going to put an ID of 0, and then put my ID. Then we're going to have our hour, and that's going to be equal to weather.dt.time. Next, I'm going to have my temperature, that is equal to weather.main.temperature, and I'm going to also make sure that this is round. And last I'm going to have is active, and we're going to determine the active container by checking its index. So I'm going to check if index is equal to the 0. This is going to be our active container. Sounds like we're done with this page. Let's save everything and also import it here. So let's say hourly forecast view. And let's also make sure this is constant and hot reload. So the hourly forecast view is not showing. Let's see if we have an error here. And it sounds like we have an error with this. So I'm going to go back to the hourly forecast view. And here inside the list view, we need to wrap it with a size box. And I'm going to give it a height of 100 because we are inside the scrollable view. And list view is taking as much height as it can. So we have some issue. So if we save it now, we're going to be able to see it. So this was everything about hourly forecast view. By defining the hourly forecast view, we're all done with the weather screen. In the next video, we will start working on our search screen. So see you in the next one. So let's start building our search screen. And for that, I'm going to close this to other screen. Inside the screens folder, I'm going to create search screen. So this is the UI that we are planning to create. First of all, create a stateless widget called search screen. So inside the build method, I'm going to return the scaffold. And inside the body, we're going to return a gradient container. This is going to give us a list of children. So as the first child, I'm going to build this pick location method. So let's say text pick location, and for this style I'm going to say text styles age 1. Next we need to put some space, and I'm gonna give it a size box with a height of like 30. Then I'm gonna put another text, and I'm gonna paste the contents here. And for the style, I'm gonna use text styles as subtitle text. Nice. And I'm also gonna put another size box. This one with a height of 40 maybe. So let's also run the app to see how it works. So the app is running successfully. Let's go to the search screen. But if you open it right now, you only see the search screen. So for that, I'm gonna go inside home screen. And here in the list of screens, we need to insert our real search screen. So let's also import it. And here I make sure that this is constant. And save. Maybe we need to do a hard restart. So let's open up search screen, and as you see, everything is in place. Now that we have defined our peak location and also our text, we also need to define our two other widgets. And those are going to be our text field and also the location icon. So let's start defining it. Here under the size box, I'm going to define a row. And inside that, I'm going to have a list of children. So I'm going to first of all define my rand text field. This is our text field widget, and this is going to need a controller. So for that, I'm going to go and define my controller here. But we are right now inside the setlist widget. So let's make it stateful, and I'm going to define my controller. That is going to be late final and text editing controller and controller. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see better. So here I'm going to first of all go to init state and fill my controller, and that is equal to text editing controller. Then we're going to go to the dispose method and say that the controller.dispose. So I'm going to also put my controller inside this widget. So let's define this widget, and I'm going to define it inside the widget folder. But it seems like we don't have a widgets folder, so let's create one. Widgets and rand text field. So this widget is going to be stateless, and I'm going to call it rand text field. We first of all pass a parameter, and that's going to be our text editing controller. Let's also pass it to the constructor. Nice. So I'm going to go to the finished style to see what we're building here. So first of all, we need to define our container. So here I'm going to put a container. This container has a height of 55. So this container has a height of 55. And we also got some decoration here. That is box decoration. So inside the box decoration, I'm going to give it a border radius. And it's going to be border radius of circular, and it's going to be 10, not 20. Next, I'm going to give it a color, and that's going to be app colors.accent blue. So inside the child widget, I'm going to put a text field. So let me close this terminal so we have more control. Inside the text field, I'm going to first of all put my controller, that is controller. Then we got some style, that is text style. So we got color, that is going to be colors.white. So this is going to be the text color for the text field. Our text field has also have decoration. So we need to put this time input decoration. So inside the decoration, I'm going to put fill color, then it's going to be colors.white. Then I'm going to pass also focus color, that is also going to be white. Next, we need to provide some hint text. And the hint text is going to be search. And lastly, I'm going to put some hint style. And this is going to require text style. For the color, I'm going to say colors.gray. And for the font weight, I'm going to say font weight.400. So now let's go to the running application and see how it looks. But before that, we also need to make sure that we import it here. So if you now hit save, you see that the entire screen is gone. And this is because we need to wrap it with an expanded widget. And yes, you see that it looks better right now. But you can see that we have some problem. And one of the problem is that here we have an underline. So inside the decoration, I'm going to say border. And we have to say input border.none. So it already looks a lot better. So let's also center our text. For that, I'm going to provide some padding. So let's provide a padding here. Inside the decoration, I'm going to say we have content padding. And this is going to be agentsets.only. First of all, I'm going to give a padding of left. And that is going to be 20. So let's see how it looks. But we also need to give a padding of 15 from the top. Or maybe we need to decrease it to 10. Looks perfect. So now that we have our text field, we also need to create our location icon. So for that, I'm going to first of all put some size box of 15. So let's provide a width of 15. And then I'm going to create my location icon. So I'm going to build it as a separate widget below. So let's create it. So location icon is going to be a very simple widget. First of all, we're going to return a container here. This container also got a height of 55 and a width of 55. We also need to provide a decoration that is going to be box decoration. So we have a border of 10 here and also appcolor.accent blue. So it has got everything right except for the icon, because for the icon we need to pass location on outline. So let's hit save now and see we have our location icon. So now that we have our search text field and also location icon, I also want to center my pick location and this other text. For that, we need to wrap them inside an align widget. So maybe we need to put them inside a separate column. So let's define one. And inside the children, I'm going to put my widgets. So I'm going to say that this widget is a constant. And inside the cross-axis alignment, I'm going to say this is center. Let's also make sure that this size box is not constant. Let's say save. And the text is centered successfully. Maybe we also need to come here and set an alignment. And I'm going to say text align.center. Beautiful. So after defining my text and also the search text field, it is time to create the final widget. So the final widget that we want to create is going to be famous city list view or famous city grid view. So for that, I'm going to come here and right below our row, I'm going to say that we have famous cities view, and my computer is especially slow tonight. So let's define this widget, famous cities view. And since this one is a view, we need to define it inside the view folder. So let's come to the views and define famous cities view dot dart. And let's also make sure that this says famous. So let's start creating our famous cities view. So here inside the build method, I'm going to return a grid view.builder. Every grid view has an item count. We have an item builder that is going to give us a context and also the index and a bunch of other properties. But before we can fill any of these properties, we need to define our famous city model. So let's define it first. And I'm going to go to the models and define famous city dot. Here I'm going to say we have a class called famous city, and this is going to take 3 parameters. The first is going to be the name, and then we're going to have latitude and also the longitude. So let's create a model for ourselves, and we also need a bunch of dummy cities with latitudes and also longitudes. So Codium is going to prepare me all these cities that are going to be London, Paris, New York, Sydney, and much more. Beautiful. So now inside the item count, I'm going to say famous cities.length. I can also say that we have a shrink wrap property that is set to true. And for the physics, I'm going to be using a neighbor scrollable physics. So let's use that. Inside the item builder, I'm going to get my item, and that's going to be equal to city. Famous city is equal to famous cities index. And let's return a famous city tile. And that is a widget that we're going to create next. So I'm going to put an index and also a city. So next we need to create our famous city. So let's go to the widgets. And here I'm going to create famous city tile.dart. So famous city tile is going to be a consumer widget. So let's say consumer, because I'm sure we had an extension for creating that. So let's say stateless, and here we have stateless consumer. I'm going to say famous city tile, and let's also import Flutter Riverpod and material.dart. So here we first of all need to get 2 properties, and that's going to be first of all string city and also the int index. Let's add these 2 properties to the constructor. So here we first of all need to get our weather data. So I'm going to say weather data, and that's going to be equal to ref.watch weather by city provider, and this is going to require us a parameter that is going to be the city name. Then instead of the container, we need to return weather data dot when, and this is going to give us all the conditions. So in case that we have the error, this is going to give us the error and also the stacked trace. So here I'm going to return an error text and also wrap it with a center widget. And in case we have loading, I'm going to return a center widget, inside which we have circular progress indicator. Nice. Let's also make sure that this is constant. But in case that we have data, I'm going to get the data and name it weather. So here we first need to return a material widget. And inside that we need to pass some color. So the color here is going to be optional. So if the index is equal to the 0, the color is going to be app colors dot light blue. Otherwise this is going to be app colors dot accent blue. We also want to have some elevation, and that's going to be the same. So if index is equal to 0, I'm going to have an elevation of 8. Otherwise, we're going to have an elevation of 0. So let's also provide the border radius, and that's going to be 25. So let's see if Codium gets it right this time or not. So inside the child, we're going to have a padding. So let's give the padding ourselves. This is going to be agent sets dot symmetric. Horizontally, this is going to be 16. And vertically, this is going to be 24. Nice. So inside the children, we're going to have a column. And to get a better idea of what we are building, I'm going to get you to this screen. So first of all, we're going to have a column and place all our children. So inside the column, I'm going to place some children, and the first child is going to be a row. And inside this row, I'm going to have another column that we have two takes on top of each other. So let's say we have children. And I'm going to close it here and place yet another column. So inside this column, we're going to first of all have our text. And this text is going to be weather dot main dot temperature. And also make sure to round it. And lastly, make it a string. And under that, I'm going to put some space. That is going to be a size box of height 10. And then I'm going to put my weather condition. So let's say this is a text, and that's going to be equal to weather dot main dot description, or maybe we had it, this was inside weather, and it's going to be 0. And we have our description. So now let's go back to the running app and save this file. I'm also going to come to this screen and import my famous city tile. And here we may need to pass city.name and hit save. But we also have a problem with gridview.builder, and the problem is about grid delegate. So let's also define our grid delegate, and that's going to be equal to sliver grid delegate with fixed cross-axis count. So the cross-axis count is going to be 2. But we also should have some spacing. There's going to be 20 from main and cross. And make sure that this is constant. So let's say if we have another error, and yes, we need to import our famous CDB inside the search screen. And also make sure that this is constant. So let's say save to see what is the result. And you can see that we already have our tiles. So I'm going to put some space here. Let's say that we have a size box. And I'm going to put a height of 30 and hit save. Beautiful. So I'm going to close the sidebar and also the famous CD view. So now we are only working on this part. So let's give you everything in style, and I'm going to say, for this I'm going to style text styles.h2, and let's also import text styles. And if we hit save now, you see that this is displayed beautifully. But we also have some styles for the weather, and that's going to be equal to text styles.subtitle text. So now that we have our weather and also our weather condition, I'm also going to say that we have an overflow here, and that's going to be equal to text overflow dot ellipses, and we also have a max line, so it's going to be 2. So now that we have this column, let's also put our image dot asset, and for the asset we need to say weather icon, but weather icon itself is not a path to asset, so we're going to say get weather icon. So this is a method that we have defined that is going to get our weather icon using only our weather code. So I'm going to pass here ID. So weather ID is going to be an ID that we pass to this method, and this method is taking our ID and is giving us an image URL. So if we now hit save, we're gonna have a lot of errors. So let's give our image a size, and this is gonna be a weight of 15. And now we can see it. But because these two are sticking together, I'm gonna say we wrap our column inside an expanded widget. So let's do that too. And it displays beautifully. But next we need to put our city name. So inside the column and after the row, we're gonna put our city name. So let's put a text here, and that's gonna be equal to weather.name. I'm also passing some styles. And let's say save now. So right now our component is complete, but it just doesn't look the way it has to. So I'm going to first of all go to the first column and give main axis alignment, and that's going to be main axis alignment dot space between. And this is going to show everything better. So I also define a cross-axis alignment, and this is going to be a cross-axis alignment dot start. Yes. So now it looks a lot better. But we also need to go to the next column. This is the column that is holding these two widgets. So we need to say the cross-axis alignment is start. Beautiful. So it kind of looked the way it has to. Maybe I'm going to give some more horizontal padding and make it like 18. And let's also compare it to the complete app. And I think this kind of looks the same. So let's come to the beta condition, and here I'm going to say we wrap everything inside a string interpolation. So here we need to put this centigrade sign. And now it looks a lot better. So with this, our search screen is complete. Here we have our search text field, we have our location icon, and we also have our famous city weather. In the next video, we will learn how to create a detailed page so that when we click on any of these items, this is going to take us to a detailed screen. See you in the next one. So let's handle showing a detailed page for each of our city tiles. So inside the list of screens, we need to create one more screen. This screen is going to be called weather detail screen. I'm going to copy and paste all the code. Since this screen is literally a clone of the weather screen, and this is going to have all the components alike, except for one difference, that this screen is getting the weather according to the location data, but the detail page is going to get the weather according to the city name. So let's explore it. Here I'm going to change a couple of imports. And I'm going to make sure that I import these files myself. So it says that this method doesn't exist. So let's bring the real provider. It is called weather by city name provider. Next, we also missed the extension capitalize. So let's import it here. And let's also import our weather info. And now all the errors are gone. So I'm going to also run the application. But before that, we're going to make sure to handle the click event. So as I was saying to you, this screen is literally a copy of the weather screen. So we start at the top with a title, that is name of the country. Then we have our date time and also our big icon. And then we have our weather description and also our weather info. So the only thing that we're missing is the hourly weather. So I'm not going to include the hourly weather for the famous cities. Now let's go to the famous city tile. And maybe we need to go to famous cities view. And here when we click on over any famous city tile, I'm going to wrap it with an inkwell. And inside the On tab, I'm going to use the navigation to navigate to weather detail screen. So here I created the navigator to navigate to the weather detail screen and also pass the city name. So let's hit save now and also run the application. So the project has been built successfully. Now we need to go to the search screen. And right now if we click on any of these cities, like London, we are going to be taken to a detail page that is specific for this location. And this is going to get the data from the API. So you see that every time we open one of them, the data is getting updated. So I guess it was all that we could do inside the search screen. Next, we will start working on a weather screen. So for that, I'm going to go inside here, inside the screen. So I'm going to create my weather screen. And since we already have that, I'm going to call this one forecast screen .dart. First of all, I'm going to build a stateless widget, and I'm going to call it forecast screen. Here I'm going to just return a scaffold for now. Then I'm going to go to the home screen, and here I'm going to replace this center text with my actual forecast screen. And let's also make it constant and save. So if you now hold restart the application, this should now show me the actual forecast screen. And yes, it does. So to have a better idea of what we are building, I'm going to go to the Complete app. Here you see our forecast screen. So I'm going to start building by returning this gradient container and then creating my forecast report. So inside the scaffold, I'm going to have a child, body. And here I'm going to return gradient container. So inside list of children, I'm going to first of all have a text. The text is going to be called forecast report. And we're going to have a style that is going to be text styles.h1. Then I'm going to pass a size box with a height of 40. And then we need to put these two texts. So we need to create a row. So the min-axis alignment is going to be space between. And I'm going to pass a list of children. So as the first child, I'm going to pass this text today. And then I'm going to pass today's date. But for that, we need to say text and datetime.now. And I'm also going to use my extension datetime. So now we also need to add constant in a bunch of places. And beautiful. Next, we need to add our hourly weather. So for that, we put some size box with a height of 20. So let's use our hourly forecast view. And without passing any parameters, this is going to show me the hourly forecast. So I'm going to copy my size box and put it after the hourly weather. And next we need to put this row. Again, we're going to put a row. And the min-axis alignment is going to be space between. Because we need both items to be at the both sides. So inside the list of children, I'm going to first of all put a text. And that's going to say next forecast. And for the style, we need some text styles.h1. This row is going to be constant, so I'm going to declare it as a constant. And here I'm going to put an icon button, or maybe just an icon. And for the icon, I'm going to say icons.calendar month outline. So I'm going to save the application up until now and open it in the emulator. So here we notice a bunch of problems. First of all, this text is now centered. So let's go and make it center. And we can do that by using an align widget. And inside the align widget, we need an alignment, and that's going to be an alignment.center. And now this is aligned successfully. But the next thing is we have our text today and also our date time, but they are missing because they're probably using the wrong color. So for the date time, I'm going to say we use a style.textstyles.h2. And for the date time, we use the subtitle text. Let's say save again. And both widgets appear. Next, we need to work on our next forecast. Here I'm going to need to pass a color, and the color is going to be white. Yes. So up until now, everything is working successfully. Let's visit our complete style again. So we have this widget, this one, hourly forecast, next forecast. And now this is the time for the actual weekly forecast. So this is the widget that is going to display as the weekly forecast. So under my row, I'm going to say we have another size box with a height of 20. And then I'm going to define my weekly forecast view. So let's save now and go inside views. So here I'm going to create my weekly forecast view. Define weekly forecast view as a consumer widget. So for that we need to import Flutter Riverpod and also material.dart. First of all, I'm going to get my weather data. So let's say weekly forecast data, and that is going to be equal to ref.watch. We have to watch the data, and I'm going to call weekly weather provider. And as you see, this is going to be an async value. So for that, we're able to use the when property to get the data for all different cases. So again, in case we have an error, I'm going to say we have an error and also the stack trace. And here we return a center. And inside that we have our error. And in case of loading, I'm going to return a circular progress indicator wrapped with a center widget. And lastly, if we have data, I'm going to get the data and name it weekly weather. So here we need to return a list without builder. So inside item count, I'm going to say weekly weather dot daily dot time, or weather code, doesn't matter, dot length, because we just want to know the length. That is going to be 7 anyway. Then we also say that we need to say shrink wrap true. And for the physics, we need to use never scrollable physics. Now we need to come inside the item builder. Here we have our context and also index. So here we need to get a bunch of properties. And those are going to be equal to the day of the week, which day of the week it is, like Saturday, Sunday, Monday, date, temp, and also icon. So here we need to update this using weekly weather instead of weather data. And we also need to import the extension that is day of the week. So for getting the day of the week, I'm going to go to first of all weather data.daily.time, and we're going to parse it through datetime.parse, because this method is used to parse a string into datetime, and then we turn it into day of the week using this extension that we have defined ourselves. Next, we need to get our date, and that's going to equal to weather data.daily.time. We also have temperature and also icon. So here we need to return weekly weather tile. So I'm also going to define that widget here. Let's say we have an stateless widget, and that's going to equal to weekly weather tile. So this widget is going to have four properties. This is going to be day, date, temperature, and also the icon. And I'm going to add them to the constructor. Nice. So now let's start defining our widget. First of all, I'm going to return a container. And this container is going to have a padding that is going to be symmetric. So horizontally, we have a padding of 16. And vertically, we have a padding of 20. We also need to provide some margin. And then this is also going to be symmetric. And we only have a vertical margin that is going to be 12. And next we need to define some decoration, and that's going to be called box decoration. So here I'm going to define my border radius, and this is going to be equal to border radius.circular 15, and we also have a color that is going to be equal to appcolors dot accent blue. Inside the child widget, we're going to have a row. So I'm going to take you to the complete app to see what we're building here. So as you see here, we first of all have a row. Inside the row, we have 3 items. We have first this item, we have this item, and also we have this item. So this is going to be our row. So I'm going to say the main axis alignment is going to be space between. Inside the row, we have children. And as the first child, I'm going to have another column. And that column is going to be our text for the day and also the date. So as the first child, I'm going to have my text. And the text is going to be day. I'm also going to put some style, and that's going to be text styles.h3. Next, I'm going to put some space. So I'm going to define a size box with a height of 5. And lastly, I'm going to put a text that is going to be date. And we also need to put a style, and that's going to be equal to text styles.subtitle text. So that is about our column. Next, we need to define our center widget. So after our column, I'm going to put my center widget, and that widget is going to be a subscript text. But we have not defined that widget yet, so let's go and define it. So inside the list of widgets, I'm going to say we have a widget called subscript text dot. I'm going to copy and paste all the code because this is a very simple widget. So here we have a couple of properties. We have our text, that is going to be this text. We have our superscript, that is going to be the superscript text. And we also have our color and also the superscript color. So the trick is very simple. We have 2 widgets in a row. That is going to be this widget and also this widget. So one widget has a font size of 40 and one widget has a font size of 80. So this widget is going to be a little bit smaller. And I'm going to use the cross-axis alignment of start. So this is the cross-axis alignment. And this is going to go to the start. So these 2 widgets are going to be aligned by their top. And that's why this is going to act as a superscript here. We could also do that using padding and margin, but this was the most efficient method. So here I'm going to define my superscript text and pass all the parameters. So for the text itself, we need to say the degree. So that's going to be the temp. And I'm going to turn that to a string. For the superscript text, we need to pass the centigrade. So let's find a centigrade here. And for that, I'm going to go to the hourly weather and hourly forecast view. And here we have hourly forecast style. So here we have a degree. So I'm going to say degree Celsius. And for the color, I'm going to say we have app colors dot white. And for the superscript text, we have app colors dot gray. So we now have defined our superscript text. Lastly, we need to define our icon. So for that, we need to use image.network. And we already have our icon here that is going to be of type string. So I'm going to pass my icon. So for that, we need to come to the weekly weather tile and pass our parameters. So I'm going to say, for the date, we're going to pass the date. For the day, we're going to say day of week. For the temperature, we have temperature. And for the icon, we have icon. Now we also need to go to the screens and forecast screen and import our weekly forecast. So let's import it and make sure this is constant. Now I'm going to go to the complete tab and also hard restart my application. So now let's go to the forecast screen. And here we sound to have an error. So let's see where the error comes from. So double is now the subtype of int. This is inside weekly forecast view. So the problem sounds to be somewhere around here. Maybe it's about temperature. So what if I say that this is to int? I'm not sure. So now this is saying the type int is of a subtype of string. So I'm going to do a hard restart and see if this is fixed or not. And in the meantime, I'm going to open up weekly weather tile to see what error we might have here. Let's also make sure that this is constant, and I'm going to search for the error. So let's go back to the forecast tile. And the issue still persists. And here we pass an icon. And maybe we need to say get weather icon and pass my icon. So let's see if this fixes the issue. And yes, it does. So we fixed one of the issues, but we have another issue. So let me check what we have here. First of all, we should have used here an image.asset and not image.network, because we're returning asset images for our icons. Then we also need to pass some size, and I'm gonna say we have a weight of 16. So let's save the application and see what happens. And we also need to do a hard restart. So I'm gonna directly go to the forecast screen. So the issue still persists, and this is saying that we have a render overflow. But more than that, we're saying that we do not have the asset 01D. And if we look into our assets, we have 01D.png. So here I said that we return get weather icon. And this is going to return me a full path that is containing the asset, icons, and 01D.png. So what could the issue be here? So the issue is surely related to this method, get weather icon. So here we have two different methods. So maybe we need to use the second method. I'm gonna say get weather icon number 2. And let's hit save now. So somehow that solved our issue, and our weekly forecast is displayed correctly. Beautiful. So with that, our application is complete. In this application, we learned how to work with Weather API. We got two different APIs from two different sites, and we loaded different kinds of data. Like, we showed you how to get data for a specific day using the geolocator package. Like this one. We also learned how to get the data for each hour of the day using the Open Weather Map over the Forecast API. I also showed you how to get the data for famous cities. And lastly, we learned how to get data for 7 days of the week. So this was all about today's tutorial. If you have any question, make sure to ask inside the comment section, and see you in the next one.